everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Female Film Critics Panel. And we are back to talk about the best of television 2023. We did our best so far about the midway point. And now we're here to wrap it all up. And it's a good thing I have help because I hardly watched any television in 2023 as far as series. So this will be good. I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Sari Cohen is here.
Yay! I'm happy to help, Rachel.
Yes,
So excited about this.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so you cover a lot of television, a lot of premieres. You cover a lot of shows on your show and everything, right?
Yes. And I feel like in particular, I find myself, I mean, we do television and movies and music, but in particular, TV is definitely my thing. I find myself all the time binge watching shows that I've got interviews for, and
Yeah.
it's exciting. I love it. Not a bad
Yeah.
job where they're like, you have to
Yeah.
watch TV, binge
Right.
watch TV all weekend. Okay.
They say beats digging ditches, right? What they say. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I did watch a ton of TV movies. If we're going that camp, and I'll mention a few that stood out. Obviously, I watched all the Hallmark movies. I watched a lot of the Lifetime movies. Well, not the thrillers, but the non-thrillers. I watched on Lifetime. I did watch some on Lifetime, some of the ripped from the headlines ones they did. And I found most of them to be kind of disappointing because I think because I already know because I'm a Dateline watcher, I know the true crime, things that they're talking about. And so I think a lot of the stuff that people that don't know are like, whoa, I can't believe like the Murtaugh one, which I mean, they got Bill Pullman. I was expecting it to be better. And it was just kind of boring because I was all stuff I already knew.
Yeah. So where do you stand on Law and Order? What do you think about like the rip from the headlines in that?
Yeah, I mean, they did a revival, right? A reboot. I haven't seen it. But I usually like Law and Order. I don't know. Have you seen it?
I no, and I was a huge Law and Order fan. I mean, I have probably seen every episode of the original Law and Order 3 times, and that's
a good show.
It was on for like decades.
Yeah.
I love that. And SVU is still going strong.
Yeah. But they did have this one on Lifetime called Mary Bailey, Would I Kill for You? And we interviewed, I got to interview Mary Bailey and the writer of the movie, Greg McBride. And that one was actually really good. And they did it kind of Rashomon style, where they had the first part of the movie was from the daughter's perspective, from Mary's perspective. The second part was from or another part was from the mom's perspective, and the other part was from the grandma's perspective. And it was actually like it had those thriller beats that you want from Lifetime, but it was actually kind of inspirational, and it was about forgiveness. And I thought that it was well done. And it was interesting because the big story out of that is like people freaking out because Melissa Joan Hart is playing a grandma. And that was the big kind of story out of it. And it's like, I don't have any problem with that because I think anybody can play within a 10-year window of their age. I think that's norm. That's fine. And so she was basically playing, I think she's 49, if I'm not mistaken. And she was, I think, well within that 10-year window to be a grandma. I didn't understand really what the big deal was.
You know what I think it is? Because she was a child actress. So everybody is going to see her as Clarissa or Sabrina. Like you remember her as a little girl. So there's probably a little bit of self identifying there where you're like, I'm not old enough to be a grandma. Melissa Joan Hart. How can she be a grandma? But yes, you're right.
Yeah. She's 47. So yeah, so I was close. Yeah, 47. Yeah. And but it was actually a good little TV movie. I also enjoyed, as far as TV movies, I enjoyed the Hammer on Lifetime. That was fun with Reba and Melissa Peterman. You're always sign me up. And I wish they would make it into a whole series because she was very sassy and the kind of judge I like to see. It was good. I don't think anybody will give it any awards for courtroom accuracy, but
Oh, I love Melissa Peterman. She's
yeah,
such a
she's
sweetheart.
amazing.
I just actually saw
Yeah.
her at the Hallmark Christmas party.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, she was in the Hall at the Holly sequel on Hallmark, and it was really funny.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed that. Another TV movie, well, the DComs, the Disney Channel original movies this year were really strong, and and that was kind of interesting because usually they're not that good, and but in this case, I love Prom Pact. I thought that was so good, and then there was another really good one called Chang Can Dunk
Mhm.
that was really well written and uh well done. And so whoever I said in my Disney ranking, I said whoever over there at whoever over there at Disney is buying because these were all purchases, they weren't made by Disney. So whoever's over there buying the DComs needs a raise because they crushed it this year.
I'm always very impressed with them. I really am.
Yeah.
That was, yeah, I'll
And Disney needed some wins this year.
It's great. I think they're doing great. Yeah, Disney's on top for
They
sure.
had a rough year at Disney, and so yeah, the fact that Prom Pact was my number one in our Disney ranking, my Disney ranking is probably not what they were hoping for.
That was, you know what? I was there for that event too. It's very, you gotta come to LA, Rachel. I'm
I
telling you all the time.
know.
That was they really put on
It
a
was so
spectacular
good.
premiere with that. They made you feel like you were at a prom and
Yeah.
it had such an 80s vibe. It was really cool. They had a band, they had, all the actors were around. It
It
was
was such a good
cool.
teen rom-com. It was so
Yeah.
well written, great chemistry, great cast. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so let's see any other TV movies I want to. Well, there were a bunch of TV movies that were disappointing. We can talk about for a second. For me, I was very disappointed with Peter Pan and Wendy. I thought that would be a lot better. I love David Lowery. I love Pete's Dragon. That's one of my favorites of these remakes. And this was just nothing. It was just bland. And it, I don't know what happened. At first, I was like, why aren't they putting it in theaters? David Lowery is a great director, and he already did one that was really good. And then I saw it and I was like, okay, I understand because it was just nothing. It's
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it? It
Yeah.
was just so bland. It was frustrating. And then I was really disappointed in Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget. I love the original Chicken Run.
Oh,
And this isn't like a bad movie, but it's extremely generic. I
oh.
just didn't love it. I just thought I ended up going rotten on it because it just felt very uninspired to me.
Really?
It was
Is
the
that
same the same as the first movie, but just going breaking in versus breaking out. They even had Mama Tweety back, and I just don't know why they couldn't have come up with a new story because that's what they did for Shaun the Sheep. Shaun the Sheep, they had like for Farmageddon, they had a totally different story with different characters and with Sean, of course. But so I don't know why they did what they did, but that was disappointing.
it was, yeah, it was, I like Zachary Levi. Again, it was another one I did interviews for. And I thought he did a really good job. I thought he added a bit of humor to the
Mm-hmm.
role that really,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the biggest Mel Gibson fan, but
Yeah.
I think he definitely did something different with that role that
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was I don't know, it was familiar and it was different. Uh, I didn't hate it. I
Yeah.
didn't
I
hate
didn't
it.
hate it either. It just was disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was disappointing. And then one I really didn't like, I kind of hated was the family switch. I just that was not for me on Netflix. I thought it was going to be so funny. It looked great. And we were going to cover it on Hallmarkies because we've covered all the Freaky Friday movies. I love Your Name. I love body swap movies. I thought this was going to be so good, but I just, yeah, I didn't like it.
My 7-year-old niece loved it.
Oh, okay. That's good.
She really
That's
enjoyed it.
good.
Maybe it was just meant to be to a different audience.
Maybe. So that's some TV movies. There were some others that I liked. I did like Tetris. I liked Air.
Yes.
I liked At Midnight. I liked that. Rye Lane. I liked. Mixed Baggage. I loved. Judy Bloom Forever. That
Oh,
was one of my favorites at Sundance.
yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah. Anything
Um,
to bloom.
hmm I did not love Nimona like other people did. It wasn't terrible, but I just found it kind of boring. Didn't do a whole lot for me.
Interesting.
But
Okay.
people, just loved that, which is cool. Um, Other one, I did not like Shotgun Wedding. I did not like Your Place and Mine. That was bad.
Yeah, I will agree with you on that. Those two were neither of which, I mean, I wasn't expecting too much from either of them.
hmm
I did, kind of like in the typical sense of a rom-com. Yeah,
Yeah,
you want the formulaic approach that you're used to, and they definitely gave us that. And big names,
yeah,
not so you would expect some kind of, but yeah, I wouldn't go recommending either.
yeah. Are you a fan of Rachel's reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/hallmarkies. Let's talk about series as far as Netflix. I haven't seen that much. Probably the highlight, even though I haven't finished yet because I've been so busy. Highlight was Hilda season 3. I love that show. So beautifully animated, such great characters, so well done. So I'm excited to finish it. And yeah, that's really I the other shows I didn't really like. It's on
On
Netflix.
Netflix?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
Netflix.
Okay. I Netflix to me has first of all, Beef, I think is
Mm,
was absolutely
I've heard good things.
it is phenomenal. It is absolutely. I was just recommending it to someone else, like when they were asking for shows to watch, and I was like, it's so different. Um,
hmm
they did an excellent job with the casting. It's such a different take on. I don't know. It's phenomenal. I would anybody looking for a good show to watch, I would say. Um,
Yeah, I've heard that's a good one.
yeah,
Yeah.
Beef is incredible.
One that was disappointing on Netflix was Sweet Magnolias this season.
Um,
I did not love, especially the Helen plot. I I didn't love it. No.
um,
just I don't know. It had some good moments, but I just felt like the writing was weak. And they made us wait so long for that. So yeah, I didn't love it.
yeah, that one I didn't I feel like Netflix has so much content that
Yeah.
that one I didn't even get to watch.
Well, I
Uh,
was so surprised that they were renewing it because the ending of the season felt like, everybody's toasting. We've got like the young sweet men, the young divas and our original all made up. And it just felt like, okay, this is the end. So I was so surprised to hear because it didn't seem like it did that well, and our recaps did not do well. So I don't even know if we'll bother next time. It just, I don't know, it just felt like all the energy died from the show because they waited so long.
Wow. That
Yeah.
could be. That's
Yeah.
that has had a big effect on other shows that, I mean, especially with the strike and everything, we lost a lot of really incredible shows that I like. The Peripheral,
Mm-hmm.
got to see The Peripheral, but it was the same creators of from Westworld,
Yeah.
Colin and his wife, and that was devastating. Like season one was phenomenal.
Mm.
It was I love that kind of sci-fi, genre.
Yeah.
And it was such an exciting show. Chloe Grace Moretz,
Mm.
all grown up. And I think it was her first stint at television too. It was just great. It
Mm-hmm.
kind of weirdly gave me True Blood vibes.
Yeah.
Remember? I mean,
Yeah.
it was not anything like it. I mean,
Mm.
plot-wise, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't anything like it, but there was something about the characters. Um, that gave me that same kind of passion that I had for True Blood, where I was hooked and I wanted to watch it every week and I couldn't
Yeah.
wait. Yeah, so The Peripheral had that, and it was left on a cliffhanger. And then the strike happened, and
Oh, that's
it
the
was just
worst.
there was just too much time lost in between
Yeah.
the first season and what would have been the second, and
Mm-hmm.
they ended up scrapping it. That
Yeah.
was a huge disappointment because that would have been, and I think it would have continued to have brought in
Mm.
quite an audience.
The other one that was really disappointing for me on Netflix, and we talked about this last time, but was Queen Charlotte for me, a Bridgerton story. I just felt like the whole thing was so depressing and it just wasn't fun at all to me. And I was like, why am I just watching like scene after scene of this person getting tortured? Like, what's the point? Like, what am I supposed to learn? And they like in the trailer, they show the scene where she's about to run away from the wedding and there's like a little bit of banter between them. That was like one of the only scenes in the entire series that was like fun and playful. Almost the entire thing was just like so depressing. And I don't know, it's just not what I wanted when I tuned in to a Bridgerton story.
Yeah, and how big of a Bridgerton fan were you going into it?
Hi,
Yeah,
hi. Yeah, I've read
yeah,
all the books. We've done recaps of the
yeah.
show, and I didn't even think it was that sexy. It was just, I don't know, it was just like, why am I watching this miserable show?
You know what I think it is? You know what I think it is? Because we were talking about this. I
Yeah.
wasn't that disappointed in it. I didn't have that much, but
Well, most people seem to
love,
like it. It got
well,
really good reviews and stuff, but it
it's
just,
kind of like if you're a real Bridgerton fan and you already have such high expectations, it's almost like doing a sequel. The
yeah,
expectations are just not going to be met. It's not going to be as good because your heart already belongs to the original.
yeah.
So it was good on its own, I think,
I
but
just don't think
knowing,
that they advertised like effectively what it is. Like,
yeah,
I guess maybe if I had known that it was going to be this like examination of mental health and marriage in a marriage in crisis, like then maybe I might have been more prepared. But the way they advertised it with this like scene of them, playful banter, and I was like, oh, Bridget, it's going to be super fun and dishy. And it wasn't. So I think maybe part of it is the expectations that they set within me and so yeah. All right, let's talk about Disney Plus. I already talked about the movies, but the highlight of Disney Plus, as far as series, and again, I didn't watch that much, but was A Small Light by far
I
was the
love this one.
highlight. I'm so annoyed that it got completely snubbed at the Emmys because it was extremely well acted. It was
Mhm.
a gripping story. It was very timely, of course, with what is happening. And I got
Yeah,
to cover the red carpet at South by Southwest for it, which was really fun. Got to interview everybody, and so yeah, I really think it's underappreciated,
yeah.
underrated.
I agree. I thought that show was phenomenal. And like you said, very timely now. And I um I couldn't say enough wonderful things about it. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a very different perspective than had ever been seen before when you're dealing with that topic.
Hmm.
Um, and it was
Yeah.
different. My family really liked it too. My mom got into it. My grandma got into it. Um, so yeah, yeah, I absolutely at the top for me.
Hmm. Yeah. And then the other show that I did watch on Disney Plus is was the Muppets Mayhem.
Mhm.
And this was the because I love the Muppets. I have Muppet May over on my channel. I've seen practically everything Muppets, and this was about Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. And so it
Mhm.
was sort of to be like a behind the scenes kind of documentary of this band and like the running of the band. And it was fun. It was fun. There was a lot of cameos, which you always get with the Muppets, of course.
Mhm.
And I do think it was too long. It should have just been a movie. There were like the middle episodes where I was like, okay, this is really dragging. Like when I get like very tempted to put it on 2x, I'm like, because it was kind of slow. Um, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I on Disney Plus really liked Goosebumps.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
The revival of Goosebumps. So I also was at the screening for it. This was during the strike, so the premiere was not really but they did a screening at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery here
Oh, that's fun.
at outdoors and set up a whole thing with like blankets and popcorn, and they had the characters, in like full costume walking
Mm-hmm.
around and like picture installations, and it was right before Halloween. So I really enjoyed that. Like if you
Yeah,
watch
that's fun.
Goosebumps as a kid, and I kind of thought going into it, I had the idea of like, I'm an adult. Goosebumps isn't really for me. I was a little too old for it when it came out the first
Yeah.
time around. I didn't really have a connection to it, but they were so smart in how they did it because they dealt with two generations. So it was like the high school kids today and then the parents who would have been teenagers in the 90s. And it was kind of a call to the adults, the now adults who watched Goosebumps as a kid. So there's a lot of music from the 90s that were incorporated, a lot of reference from the 90s that were incorporated. And they had like Justin Long was in it. Um,
I love Justin Long.
yeah, and he was so good. He was just having so much fun in that role. You could tell it was a role that he just had fun with. Like he just
Yeah,
jumped
yeah.
into and made it his own. And
It's like my dream that him and Kate Bosworth will be in a rom-com
they
together.
should.
Oh,
Oh
because
my God.
their freaking Instagram is already a rom-com. Let's
Yeah.
make it.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise,
Fun. That's
and
cool.
the way that they set it up for a second season, because it was like
Mm,
kind of thought it might be like an anthology of like, okay, one season and then they'll have to probably do a whole other cast of characters for season two. And no, they left it open
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for um yeah, for a
Yeah.
continuation of the story, which was cool because I
Yeah.
enjoyed all the characters. So it was
Mm-hmm.
definitely a family watch. And I scare jumped. I don't know if it was that I was in a cemetery or what was going on, but I was not thinking. There were at least twice that I literally jumped like a
That's the
popcorn
best.
flew, and I was like, ah, what's going on? This is a kid show. No, it was really
Yeah.
good, really good.
Well, that's the big disappointment, I think, for almost everybody coming out of Disney Plus. Well, there's so much this year, but was Mandalorian season 3. I didn't even finish it. I watched like 2 episodes. I'm like, this is not good.
So, yeah, we were just talking about that. I sadly have been missing The Mandalorian for since last season. So
Yeah,
I
it's not
and
great.
there's so
You
much
didn't
TV
miss
to watch.
much.
There's so much TV to watch
I
that
know.
it just got lost in the shuffle. So I
I
don't.
heard, and I do mean to eventually catch up on it and see Loki season 2. I heard it was really good. I just
Really
didn't have
good.
time during
Loki
the,
is
but I
really
heard it was good.
good. Ki Kwan
Mm-hmm.
stole the show for me.
Because I love the first season. I haven't watched that many of the
Okay,
MCU series,
I'm
but
gonna
I did
go.
watch Loki.
I'm gonna go as far as to say I think the second season is better than the first. Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay,
like
good.
I like where they went with it. I think Loki is one of the best shows on TV right now. I
Mm-hmm,
really
mm-hmm.
enjoy it. Yeah.
Today's episode of the podcast is sponsored by W Rated, the podcast where we willingly watch the world's worst rated movies. Join me, Daisy.
And me, Claire, as we break down the IMDb Bottom 100, choosing a different film from the list every episode.
We take a deep dive into the plot, production, release, and reviews, usually with a special guest, to uncover if these films are truly as bad as everyone says they are.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Good Pods, and anywhere else you find your podcasts.
So let's talk about just some other random unspreading shows. I think you got to talk about Schmigadoon season 2. I love it so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was super fun because not only did I cover it on Theater Tuesdays, but I got to, it kind of pushed me to see some shows that I hadn't seen. Like I'd never seen Cabaret before. I saw Cabaret. I had seen Sweeney Todd before, but I saw it, ended up seeing it 3 times this year, which is intense. But a lot of those sort of darker shows, it was like, okay, I'm going to go see it. I saw Chicago before it aired. I saw that last October. I'd seen the movie, but I had never seen it on Broadway. And so anyway, just kind of checked off a lot of these shows, and I liked the story. I'm probably more a fan of the classic shows in season 1, like your Music Mans and your Oklahomas and I think those ones are a little more like ripe for parody because they are so like there's so many cringe things in them now,
Yeah.
so it makes them easy targets, but it was still fun. I had seen Chorus Line before. I'd seen the only big one that they had a lot is Pippin, which I've never seen. I would like to see it. But those kind of darker shows don't tend to be done that much here in Utah. So, but hopefully eventually I'll get a chance to see it. But it was as a huge theater fan, it was a joy. It was great. The songs were really good. So yeah, I loved Schmigadoon season 2.
Absolutely loved Schmigadoon. It took season 2, yes, took a darker turn, and I didn't really know. I was so excited when season 2 came out because I really didn't know how they were going to handle it coming from such an upbeat, like you said, really parodied season. What? Yes, you can throw out all these things and be like, yeah, that's not really right. But they held true to that in season 2. So even all these darker things, they were able to like pull back in a realist way and be like, this is off.
Well, I was really impressed too that they were able to get basically everybody back. Fred Armstead, I think, was the only person who didn't return. Because season 1, it was relatively easy because Broadway was out. Broadway was closed. But the fact they were able to get Aaron Tveit back, they were able to get Aaron DeBose just for 2 songs, but still Kristen Chenoweth. I was kind of surprised by that. And I can't imagine that they're not going to do a season 3. It's probably a pretty expensive show, but it seems like it's got enough buzz and enough of a hive. Because I think it'll be super fun season 3 because you're going to have so many popular shows in this next era. You're going to have Les Mis. You're going to have Cats. You're going to have Phantom. Just off the top of my head.
It's so smart. There's never been a show done like this before. I think it's so clever. It's so unique.
Yeah.
The ensemble cast is out of this world.
Yeah. The only thing that might be hard about season 3 is that how do you kind of mesh all, like, where's the through line between Les Mis and Cats and
we'll find
Phantom? Like that would be the hardest part about the writing is where, because it was easy to kind of find the old-fashioned through line. It was easy to find. I mean, we say it's easy, but I'm sure it was difficult. But then the Chicago, through line of that darker kind of period. There's
Yeah.
but the 80s, it does feel somewhat random. The shows. So where do
Yeah.
you find that like through line of sort of the next era?
They'll tie it, it's not obvious to me. It
Yeah.
wasn't obvious to me. Even I thought the same thing about the second season. I was
Yeah.
like, how are they going to tie this together? And then instantly you watching it, you're like, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's an easy, your brain
Yeah,
connects.
they're
You're like,
brilliant. So I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll figure it out, but
Yeah.
it was a great show. And I did cover both seasons on my other channel. I mean, I covered it here. And so that was great. Let's see what else. I mean, I absolutely love and adore All Creatures Great and Small. The season 4 airs on PBS Masterpiece this weekend. It starts, and it would be a great show to binge because it's each of the seasons is only 6 episodes. So you could easily catch up. If you haven't watched the show, we at Hallmarkies Podcast, we did recaps of every single episode, me and Michelle, and it's so good. It's the best show on television right now. Even though I have hardly seen any, I feel confident in saying that it's so good. The acting, story, yeah. Put it on your list.
Yeah.
So
oh
good.
My gosh. I am.
Yeah.
One of the other, while we were on the Keegan Michael Key thing, I did want to bring up Reboot.
How does the man sleep? That's what I wonder, because he was in Schmigadoon, Reboot. He was in like every animated film. I swear, he's like a voice.
He's incredible. He's so. I mean,
He's in Wonka. Like,
I even went back to watch old episodes of Key and Peele not that long ago. I sleep with the TV on, so I was like, I'll just watch this at night.
He was in so many projects this year.
Sadly, Reboot was canceled. That is another one. Like, if we're gonna talk about shows that we're disappointed in, the only thing that I can say about that is because that show was so good. That show was so good. And the fact that it was canceled after one season breaks my heart. That's what's disappointing, where I'm like, I thought it was one of the best shows on television. I've met a couple of the actors from the show and just,
I heard good things about it. I did.
It's watch it. I would say watch it, but then don't be upset at the end when you're like, it's not.
There's just so much content. It's impossible. Like, that's the hard part. It used to be there were like maybe 10 channels, and so everybody kind of ended up watching the same stuff. That's the hard part. Now, I heard good things about that, but seriously, All Creatures Great and Small is great. One casualty, and I think it's sad, is Grease Rise of the Pink Ladies. It was so well done, great songs, good, well filmed, well acted, well done. And they got canceled. It wasn't really a huge surprise, but the weird part is that we did a recap of season 1, me and Kristen Maldonado, and that is the most listened to recap of the entire 2023 for Hallmarkies Podcast.
Wow.
Like, what?
Well,
it's so weird.
You know what? I from what I understand, they were still trying to find another home for it. I don't know if that is dead in the water, or it's still there was.
I'm sure it was a super, super expensive show to make it, especially at the quality that it was. But it's too bad because it was, I think, a pretty good show.
What I really appreciated about it, see, I'm a big Grease 2 fan. I'm that small population that was like, you can keep Grease 1, but Grease 2, that's the hill I'm gonna die on.
Yeah.
So I loved, sadly I missed the premiere, and I was really bummed because they had some Grease 2, some of the cast of Grease 2 show up, and I was like, oh, out of all the things little Sari would have been so excited for, that was one of them. And sadly I had to miss it. But what I appreciated about that show were the nods to Greece too.
Yeah.
It's like they really did just create this world of Greece, and it included all
Yeah.
of the fandom. So yeah, I'm not too surprised that it was canceled, but I'm also, as a fan, that's a bummer.
Yeah, I think it had lots of potential.
Mm.
If it's sad because I feel like there's not that many. There used to be there used to be like executives that would kind of like latch onto a show, and even if it had a rough first season, would keep going. Like a lot of the best shows, our favorite shows, had rough first seasons. Arrested
Yes.
Development, Seinfeld.
Seinfeld
Yeah,
never would have made it today. Seinfeld
yeah.
went, I think it was like the first few seasons of Seinfeld it was horrible.
Yeah, The
Like it,
Office. I mean, just a lot of these shows, the like initial first season, Parks and Recreation,
yeah.
like they didn't have that good of first seasons, didn't have that good of response, but somebody in some executive really thought it was a good show and just kept going despite it not doing that well, and then they would eventually build the hive. And I feel like it's just so much harder to get that kind of thing nowadays, and it's a shame because there are so many good shows that just are one and done, or even if they can get beyond a pilot at all, are lucky,
Yeah.
which is a shame. But yeah, Grease Rise of the Pink Ladies was good. I have to give a little shout out to Sanditon season 3 because I hated the show season 1 and 2, but I'm such a Jane Austen nut that I was like, I gotta finish it, I gotta watch it, and they did bring it around for season 3. It was much better than the other 2 seasons. It's still kind of a terrible show, but and it's frustrating because it felt very try hard. It was written by Andrew Davies, he did like Pride and Prejudice and the great adaptations of Jane Austen. So then when I went and watched it, I was like, first season, I was like, this is terrible. I hate it. And it was just like trying too hard to be edgy, and what's frustrating is that Sanditon is an unfinished Jane Austen novel. So they could literally do whatever they want with it. They could take it wherever they want. And that what they chose was so dumb and frustrating. And uh but hey, they did have a pretty good season 3, a final season, where that's due. My biggest problem with the series was anything that had to do with Esther. She was so annoying, and there was this whole plot with her like being in love with her stepbrother, and that's the kind of thing that felt like a little try hard, like you're just trying to make it like edgy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
And then we had 2 new series on Hallmark this season. You had Ride, which I enjoyed more than most, but I think it was hurt by the G rating of Hallmark. I think it would have been a lot better. And if they do, I guess they're trying to sell the show to other networks, and CW is airing the first season now.
Yeah.
And if CW does decide to do a season 2, which they haven't announced yet, but if they do, I think that it would be more successful there because they can make it like just a little bit hotter. And it just seemed like a show that was needed that kind of camp to make it work, needed a little bit. And it just felt kind of boring on Hallmark. I think there just wasn't, I don't know, enough there for this kind of like a family drama, supposed to be cowboys and relationships and love triangles. You need that bit.
I like that. I like that idea, Rachel. I feel like
Yeah.
you would be a very good writer on the show.
I'm available.
Because
Oh,
I didn't, my mind didn't really go there with it. I kind of felt like I thought Hallmark was a good home for it. It felt very, it was like a call to Yellowstone, and then
yeah.
it had
And
some
they were definitely trying
familiarity,
to get into the Heartland
right?
audience.
But it also had the familiarity of like when calls the heart. Like I kind of felt a little bit of
Yeah.
it was tapping into that, or trying to tap into that audience
Yeah.
with the Yellowstone feel.
Yeah. And they even had some of the same locations as Heartland.
Yeah.
They were definitely and Heartland season 16 and season 17 was pretty enjoyable. Uh what they're doing with Lou makes me very annoyed. I'm just so tired of Lou. But for the most part, and I think what makes Heartland work is because Amber Marshall is so strong as your lead, and her bond with the horses is so like palpable and you feel it, that then they can work, all the other stuff that's fine, but around it. And that was something they kind of lacked in Ride, is having that one person who's your focus, who's your strength, and
Yeah.
there were a lot of talented people involved, but you know what I mean? Like it missed that kind of one person who's like, this is it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly my cup of tea. Like I wasn't so in love with it.
Yeah.
I wanted to, I'm a big Nancy Travis fan. I loved her, and so I married an axe murderer.
Yeah.
And then she did,
3 Men and a Baby too.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
was it even with Tim Allen, was it Still Standing or something like that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I mean,
Last Man Standing.
Last Man Standing.
Yeah.
And yeah, Still Standing. So
Yeah.
she's a great actress. I even felt like she was underutilized in it. Like you
Yeah.
said,
She
there wasn't
was.
a main, and they were great. I wanted to really like it. So
Yeah.
the CW can take it and make it a little bit steamier and give it
Yeah.
that CW thing.
Yeah.
Um,
It'll make it way better.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I think where Hallmark really knocked it out of the park.
Yes.
The Way Home.
Yes, which
Oh.
I'm so excited. It starts season 2 this weekend. And yeah, we have a preview that will be airing on Hallmarkies podcast. Me and Casey did, where we went through season 1, and then we kind of talked about what we know about season 2. So that's really fun. Yeah, this was a great show. I was nervous about it going into it because I don't tend to like teenage angst. Like that is just usually not for me. And I was like, oh, am I going to like this show? But they were really well-written characters, and I should have had faith in it because Heather Conkle and her daughter Alexandra are the writers and creators, and they are also the main writers of Heartland. So I should have had faith in it, and that they could write another family drama that would be compelling. And I think it was the most fun show to watch as a group, as with the Hallmarkies, because I just can't think of that many shows lately where somebody would be like, oh, look at that's 1814 there, look at that almanac, or look at that clue there, or look at that journal, or and so everybody kind of had different theories. Oh, what if this is going to happen with Dell, or what if this happened with Kat and young Kat and Elliot and all the characters. And it was a real water cooler show of 2023, and that was fun to be a part of. It was enjoyable, and so I'm real hopeful about season 2.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm in love with that show.
Yeah, it's so good.
I am obsessed
Underrated.
with it, in love with it. I think it is, I mean, with all the content we have out there, I will say like it really is one of my favorite shows on TV.
Yeah.
It's just It doesn't even need all the steamy stuff. Like you don't have to add anything to it.
No.
It is a multi-generational story. And of course, like Andy McDowell. I mean, you had me at Andy McDowell. You're like, my goodness,
Yeah.
legend. And then Kyler, who's like,
Yeah.
obviously from like, our generation, you're like, oh, we kind of grew up with her. And then
Yeah.
it
It
just
was fun to see her back on Hallmark because she had
yeah,
been in
yeah,
a Christmas movie called Window Wonderland.
yeah.
That's a fan favorite, and so to see her back on Hallmark was fun. And Evan Williams, he was in when he was a teenager, was in a Hallmark movie called The National Tree,
Yeah.
and so I was like, oh, he's back.
They brought everyone to they really put together a cast. Also
Jefferson Brown,
musically,
I love him as Colton as the dad.
yeah. Oh,
So good.
so good. And this cast is so musically talented. It's like Andy McDowell
Yeah.
himself, and then Kyler's got some voice, and then
Yeah.
you're just like, what is going? Evan
True.
also, like all of them. I feel like they all need to have like
A
a
musical episode. Oh
whole
my gosh, I would
musical
die.
episode. Yeah, like what I don't know because alone as actors they're phenomenal. Anyway, yeah, I
Yeah.
could go on and on and on about this show and how it just exciting each
Yeah.
episode was and how invested you get in not only the
Yeah.
characters but the storyline and then the possibilities for season two. It's just so cool. It's just such a
Hmm.
good, it just gives me such a warm and fuzzy feeling of
Yeah.
and excitement at the end of it is
Yeah.
just, oh, I'm so excited
Yeah.
for season
It's a
two.
great show.
Mhm.
The last show that I have to talk about is When Calls the Heart. I covered it for obviously for Hallmarkies podcast. It does extremely well for us on the podcast, so I enjoy covering it. But sometimes it's a weird show because I feel like oftentimes it makes really safe, really boring choices. And then all of a sudden it's like, surprise, we made this like crazy choice and and then they're like, I can't believe everybody was so upset. And I'm like, what? Of course they were upset. Like, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like they don't really know their audience all that well. And what was crazy about this season and made it like I was glued to the screen because I was like, what? They're not really going to do this, are they? Is because they've been building up this relationship between Elizabeth and Lucas, and they were engaged and they're getting married, and the wedding was supposed to be this season, and she had picked Lucas over Nathan, and I was excited about that because I was like, oh, this is interesting because she'd already been with a Mountie. So to be with another Mountie with Nathan, I was like, oh, that's, more of the same. And so when they picked Lucas, I was like, oh, that's surprising. But then the way they made it play out with her and Lucas, I was like, oh, this is super boring because he was just like the perfect man. He did like everything. Like the worst thing that he did was like buy her a house. I mean, and so
Wants that.
yeah, exactly. And so I was like, oh, they've totally not taken an interesting route. And so then like and they'd been building up this relationship between Faith and Nathan. And that was like, whatever, it was fine. They can't seem to get a good companion for Faith. I don't know what the problem is because Andrew Brooks is fantastic. But they got up to like, it was like it was like episode 4 or 5. And all of a sudden they were like, this relationship just isn't working. And I'm like, what relationship? They literally have never even kissed or dated or anything. And and they're like, yeah, we're better off as just friends. And I was like, what? And, yeah, it was so bizarre. And I knew that something must have happened. I was like, is Chris McNally leaving the show? Like something must have happened to have made them change their mind and be like, okay, we have to course correct. And I still don't know what that is because he's not leaving the show. But they did say in a podcast, Brian Bird, he did say that they had changed midway through. I mean, it was obvious they changed midway through that. There's no way that was like scripted to have like your main arc and then all of a sudden be like this relationship off screen that we didn't even see. Like what? And so then all of a sudden they started building up these clues that Elizabeth was going to leave Lucas and for Nathan. And I was just like, no way. They're not going to do that. I don't believe it. but because I didn't believe it, I was like, I gotta watch. And so I was really engaged. And so and the way that they were able to, in the matter of like 2 episodes, get almost everybody talking and everybody on board was genius.
Yeah.
And so if that was their idea, then they crushed it. And so every episode we're like, oh my gosh. And she did end up leaving Lucas at the end. Spoiler alert. I was just like, what?
Yeah.
And she hasn't now gone with Nathan, but that's definitely like hinted at big time. And I'm like, they spent 3 seasons with her, with Lucas. And now they're just gonna all of a sudden, like, I don't know. So I would just love to be a fly on the wall of those meetings of somebody saying like, this isn't testing well or something. And I don't know if it had anything at all to do with the fact that Chris McNally was on Rise of the Pink Ladies as like a super creepy teacher dude. I doubt it, but you never know. Like maybe there had to have been something had to happen that they were like, okay, we're going to completely change the trajectory of all of our characters and the whole show in one episode and have like a whole different show after that. It was wild. I was just like, what?
I love it when you break it.
So
listen, the fans of this show give me life. I love the show, but I'm like, I really love the fans. I was like, this
and they like really kind of safe and sweet and everybody kind of compares it to Little House on the Prairie, but the thing is like Little House on the Prairie took way more risk than One Calls the Heart. They had episodes on some pretty on domestic violence and racism and prejudice and stuff.
The television was a lot more daring in the 80s.
Yeah.
I introduced my 7-year-old niece to Gem,
Gem and the Holograms.
And I was watching it. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like, you're just in the pilot, what you're dealing with. It's like a whole adult situations. And I was like, let's
true.
Back on Blippi. I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble for this.
Yeah. And I don't know. They just want like a really soft, sweet show, which I guess makes sense for the like people who watch Hallmark movies. It kind of makes sense, but I feel like for a show, you need your characters to grow. You need them to be flawed. You need them to make mistakes and learn and be interesting. And so often they're kind of resistant to that. But I guess just what makes it kind of crazy is the people at the show like feed into that 99% of the time. And then they have this 1% that's like, people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And they're so upset. And so it's fun to cover. It's a great show to cover.
Yeah.
And I just still could not believe what they did. I could not believe that they really went there and she really did break up with Lucas and and what made me mad though is that the finale, the season finale, she was like, she was like, oh, that you were the safe choice. I was afraid to be brave or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, you might say that eventually, like with a little bit of distance, but I don't think you'd say that like when you were just about to marry this person. Like, I don't think you'd say that like on the day at the breakup. Like that felt too much for her. So it's just,
right.
I'm like, do the people making the show know how television works? Because this is not how you like write an arc. This is not how you do a story.
They have us talking like, oh,
which is what made it fascinating because it was just so crazy and bizarre and you could not believe that this is what they're doing. So they did it. They absolutely succeeded in getting my interest back in the show. So I guess they do know what they're doing. It was super fun to podcast about, and we'll see what happens next. That's for sure. But yeah, I think that's everything I had.
Yeah,
to talk about.
I mean, I could go on. There are so many favorites that we didn't even get into. From is an excellent show. People like I mean, honestly, I could go on. I watch a lot of television all the time. We didn't even
Yeah.
touch on reality TV. Like, don't even.
Yeah. I haven't watched much reality television. I watched Top Chef. That was really the only, and then like other stuff on Food Network. But as far as like a show, I watched Top Chef. I haven't watched Survivor in 4 seasons, which is really sad. I
Yeah.
just have been so busy. I haven't, and it's so sad because it used to be like a huge part of my life. Like I used to follow all of the recaps and the podcasts and everything, but I just just didn't have time.
You know what they're even doing now? They're merging reality shows together with like,
Hmm.
like the challenge where you have Survivor, Big Brother, Love Island,
Yeah.
got all these people on, or like even the dating shows with
Hmm.
it was like Love is Blind and what were the other ones? They merged again with like an ultimate dating show, like all the Netflix show, Too Hot to
Yeah.
Handle, like all the it's so
Well,
it's
and then they had Sari
so
Fields on Big Brother.
yes, yes.
Yeah, and I love her.
Great. I mean, yeah, we
Yeah.
could do a whole hour on reality TV. I honestly was not a
Yeah.
reality TV fan until 2020, and then I just dove down
Oh, you
the
told
rabbit
me.
hole. That was like, now let's
Yeah.
talk.
Well, Top Chef was pretty good. That was a good
Yeah,
season.
yeah.
Buddha, yes. And he manages to always make food that looks so good. Like even if he doesn't win the challenge, I'm like, whatever you made looked way better than what other people made.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So good.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah. So,
yeah.
yeah, a lot of good shows. Let us know if you're listening what shows you liked in 2023. I would love to hear in the comment section which ones I should catch up on. There's so many. I swear a day doesn't go by that someone's like, you need to watch this show. It's a great show. And I'm like, I only have so many hours in the day. I watched over 500 movies in 2023.
That's pretty good. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Old and new.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I watched, I mean, a lot of them are TV movies, so they're like shorter, but still,
Counts.
I just don't have a lot of time to watch shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
My friend Kristen, she watched 108 shows
Wow.
in 2023.
Wow.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, we vote on this stuff. We've got the HCA awards, the Astra awards this weekend. So it's like you have to you have to watch all the movies, you have to watch all the TV shows. And I say have to lightly because again,
Yeah.
oh,
I forgot about one more on Netflix that was actually really good. It was Survival of the Thickest.
oh,
That was actually really funny.
wow.
Yeah. And the guy Marone Zadi who played Luca.
Mhm.
Yes.
Really?
He was, yeah. I was big team Luca. Yeah, it was actually a pretty good show.
Yeah, there is a lot of them. A lot of Daisy Jones in the Sixth. I mean, we could just like keep listing High Desert and like let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, let us know what you've been watching, and if people want to follow you on socials, how do they do that?
You can find me on Instagram at The Savvy Scribbler, TheSavvyScribbler. Also on TikTok, I'm at Sari_Tales.
Right.
Sari Tales.
And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. And also make sure you're following the Hallmarkies podcast. Again, we have recaps of And Just Like That. We have recaps of All Creatures Great and Small, of When Calls the Heart, Ride. So just of The Way Home, tons of the shows that we talked about. All right, Sweet Magnolias. Just a lot of the shows that we talked about. Bridgerton. We have recaps on Hallmarkies podcast, so check that out. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. Really appreciate that. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate that so much. We also have a Patreon group, which is a lot of fun, and the merch store. So take a look at that. I'm going to be working on some with my artist friend Jessica. We're going to be working on some of the Way Home merch coming out. So keep an eye on that. It's going to be good. So
I will love that.
yes. All right, well, thanks so much. This was super fun, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye everyone.